Hi, everyone, and welcome to one of my favorite topics, engaging your board in resource development. My name is Susan Snozzy, and I am with Club RD, Resource Development, Operations, and Collaborative Services. I hope that you'll find today's webinar helpful and giving you some great tools and strategies to get your board more engaged in resource development. When resource development is truly a partnership, it really is fantastic. I see we have a question. Do we need to sign in somehow? You don't. You're already all listed on here, but at the end of the webinar will be all of the handouts and things that you need. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. That does bring me to the first housekeeping item for our webinar today. You can see the questions box, and if at any time you have a question or a comment that you'd like to raise during the webinar, just feel free to go ahead and type it in that box, and as I see that you have put in a question, I'll take a moment and answer it. We'll also have time for questions at the end, but I certainly don't want you to be sitting through the webinar wanting to ask a question without the opportunity to do so, because these learning sessions are really all about you. Also, I wanted to let you know that at the end of the webinar, there will be handouts for you to download, one of which is a PDF of this PowerPoint that I'm presenting today. So you'll have this and many other tools to take back to your club with you and to apply in engaging your board in resource development. So I was just looking through a book by Carol Wiseman, and it's called Turning Ordinary People into Fundraising Superheroes. And it's really about board engagement and how to get boards involved in resource development. And she has a cartoon in there that shows two brain surgeons in an operating room, and it's stressful, and they're cutting someone's brain open, and it's complicated and it's difficult. And one says to the other, well, at least it's not fundraising. And unfortunately, I think sometimes that's how our board members feel. It would be less stressful to be conducting brain surgery. It would be less difficult to be in an operating room than it would be to do resource development. And so really my hope for this session is that you will learn some tools to help show your board the joy of resource development. Today our goals are to understand the role of the board in resource development, to learn how to engage the board in each one of these roles, and to learn how the staff can support the board in resource development. So let's go ahead and get started. When we think about doing resource development as club professionals and folks with some experience in this area, we probably feel excited about the possibilities that lie in resource development for our kids. We know that when donors invest in our mission and our work, we are able to change the future for kids. We probably feel a little anxious, but mostly just thrilled to be out there changing the future. Well, for our board members, that's not always the same. They feel like it's begging, and they have a lot of misconceptions about doing resource development. Says Guru Gail Perry, members of boards do not understand the full context of fundraising, not only how we do it, but what it is all about. The bigger picture of developing friends, donors, investors, and partners who are on our organization's team and who will stick with our cause for the long run, providing both money and moral support for our mission. And I think Gail sums it up really well. They don't necessarily understand the bigger picture of fundraising, and it's up to us to help board members to understand that, so that they don't see fundraising as begging. Board members are often hesitant to fundraise because they equate it with the awful experience of asking for money. It makes them feel uncomfortable, and we're smart enough as people not to do things that make us anxious or uncomfortable. Despite the fact that your board members really want to help, when it comes time to pick up their phones, if we haven't gotten them past that stumbling block of feeling that they're only asking for money, they're probably just not going to do it, no matter how much they love your organization. But that's the second point. We want to be sure that board members are really engaged with our organizations and passionate about what we do. That's not always the case, and we're going to talk about igniting passion in board members as a way to get them more involved. And then lastly, we need to utilize the skills and networks of our board to make resource development rewarding and fun. Each board member has something else to bring to the table, and it's up to us as staff to figure out what that is. Not every board member should be an asker. Some board members may have other things that they can do to help us succeed at resource development. So ultimately, the best way to get your board members engaged is to get them charged up about fundraising and deeply committed to the goal you're trying to achieve. So let's start from the beginning. There are three main roles for board members, and we'll talk about each in turn. The first is giving generously to the organization. The second is being an advocate, going out in the community to talk about the organization and all that the club is doing for kids and families. And third is participating in resource development. The two biggest jobs of board members are governance of the organization and making sure that the organization is fiscally responsible and financially stable. Board members should be able to do all kinds of things to help with resource development, such as identifying prospects, opening doors, asking for gifts, and providing stewardship. So what we need to be asking is, what do we need to do in order to engage our boards in these three areas? First, the expectation should be that every board member will make a gift to your club every single year. They shouldn't just give, not a $5 or a $10 gift. We're asking them to give at a significant level and consider our club one of their top 3 charities of choice. One of the ways I've heard clubs explain this is a sacrificial gift. Other clubs say a gift that's large enough that you care how it's spent. So when I give $10 or $15 a year to, say, the Humane Society, I don't really care how it's spent. But if I was giving them $500 or $1,000, I would, right? And the same is the case with the club. A gift that they care how it's spent. How do we do this? Most importantly, when you recruit board members, be sure that they know the expectations of the position in regards to giving a gift. Imagine how upset you would be if you joined a board and later learned that it was an expectation that they make a gift. But more than that, the more that your board members are passionate about the work at the club, the more they'll want to give. So it won't be you're making a gift because you have to. They'll want to give you gifts, just like your donors do, because your board members are some of your most important donors. Additionally, some other ways to help make this happen are your CVO, board president, and CEO can meet individually with each board member each year to ask for their gift and determine their fundraising goals and how they can participate in the fundraising process. You can give them a menu of opportunities of how they can help, such as hosting a party with a purpose, attending special events, helping with the annual campaign, and so forth. You can make an annual commitment form that your board member signs that says, these are the ways I'd like to help with resource development, and I'm committed to making a gift. We know 100% board giving is so important in creating momentum for your campaign and in creating credibility with your donors. After all, no one would want to invest in your club if those people who are its strongest advocates aren't willing to do so as well. Additionally, accountability is really important. So lots of our clubs say we want to have 100% board giving. And then they mention it at board meetings and that's about it. There's no accountability. So there needs to be some way that we're able to make sure that everyone is doing all they've promised. This includes tracking who is doing what and when. You might give a quarterly update on board member progress as a whole. You might have those individual one-on-one meetings to keep that commitment top of mind for your board members. Or your CEO could send something out to each board members, letting them know what they'd completed from their commitment form on an annual basis or a quarterly basis. You can also make it more exciting to give by recognizing board members who have gone above and beyond. Maybe they saw all of their annual campaign prospects last week, or maybe they've made a significant gift that they don't want to have confidential. Maybe they've been spending time in the club. Recognizing board members not only rewards that, but it also kind of cues the other board members as to what's important and what is valued. And in the downloads at the end of this session, you will have a form that's a board member individual development plan and circle of influence exercise, and you may be able to use this toward helping your board members to give generously as well as be involved in resource development. Next, you really want your board members to be an advocate for the club. And this is hard for board members to do if we haven't got them involved. We want our board members to sing from the rooftops how great our organization is in their community. We want it to be that whenever they run into somebody at a party or at the grocery store, they immediately think, hey, that's Susan. She's a board member at the Boys and Girls Club. I bet she's going to tell me what's happening at the club. The only way to do this is to arm our board members with the tools they need to be passionate about our organization and to be a great advocate. So there's some different techniques that clubs use very effectively. One that I saw used that was just fantastic. A parent came to a board meeting and spoke about the impact the club had had on her daughter. Her daughter was disabled and was in a wheelchair, and she'd been having trouble getting along at school, didn't have a lot of friends, and one of her teachers suggested she join the Boys and Girls Club. And when she did, she found friends. She developed her social skills. She got involved in swimming, which was, she'd never been involved in any athletics before, and she built self-confidence. And it absolutely changed the life of this little girl. And as this parent was telling this story, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I can't even do it justice. And so those board members now can tell that story when they go out and see other people. I've also seen club kids come in and speak. And of course, that's amazing because they're so cute and they're so articulate. They're so wonderful. And the things they're doing change their lives. That's a really great way to have a mission moment at your board meeting. You could have one of your program directors come in and share a little information about, this is our Passport to Manhood program. This is what we're doing. That way your board's getting to know your staff and they're learning more about your programs. The most important way to help your board members become advocates is to ask them to spend time in the club. And I don't know how many times I've gone to a board meeting and asked, hey, has everybody here been to the club and spent some time with the kids during regular hours? And had board members say, no, I haven't. And that's crazy, right? Imagine if you were on the board of directors for the zoo and someone said something to you like, I really like the lion exhibit. And you'd have to say, oh, I've never been to the zoo. Do we have a nice zoo? Because it's the same thing. I've never been to the club. Oh, I'm only there when they're not open. That's nuts. So we got to change that practice. A lot of clubs require their board members to spend some time in the club. And you can certainly do that. Some clubs will have a board meeting that meets in the club and lets out early within areas set up where the board members can go spend time with the kids. You know, once you're there with the kids, you really get it. And we need our board members to be there playing basketball with the kids or playing carpet ball with the kids, reading books with the kids, eating dinner with the kids, whatever it is so that they get to know what wonderful people we have belonging to our clubs and the life-changing work that happens there every day. I cannot emphasize this enough. Once you leave spending time with the kids, it changes your whole perspective. And if we aren't giving that experience to our board members, then their requests for funding are hollow. The third way to help our board members to be an advocate is helping them to develop an elevator speech. So the idea of an elevator speech is, let's say you stepped onto an elevator and someone on that elevator said, tell me about the Boys and Girls Club. You would only have the 30-second elevator ride before that person got out to answer their question. And so the idea of developing an elevator speech is learning how to articulate clearly and succinctly the work that you do in the club every day. If you can arm your board members with that elevator speech, they will feel a lot more comfortable going out and talking about what you do at the club. So what you can do is run your board members through some activities, writing elevator speeches, practicing those elevator speeches, doing role plays to give those speeches for each other, doing them in front of the entire board, and giving feedback so that they can listen until it's really honed down and really fantastic. You want the speech to be something that leaves a positive thought in someone's mind when they get off the elevator, or even better, make them want to stay on and find out more. So there's an exercise that you can download in the handouts after this webinar that leads you through how to help your board members to write those elevator speeches. As staff members, this is easy for us because we talk about the club all the time. But sometimes your board members might just get a little bit hung up, and the more experience that you're giving them and the more tools you're giving them, the more successful they're going to be when it comes time to talk on that elevator. Next, sort of at the nitty-gritty of how a board member becomes more engaged is participating in resource development. It's really all about relationships when it comes to fundraising, and I don't think we can emphasize this enough for our board members. It's not about asking for money, it's about building relationships. It's not about cold calls. It's about getting to know people in your community who can generously give to your organization and feel like they want to make a difference. Your board members want to help. They want to help your organization or they wouldn't have joined your board. So we need to guide them in ways that they can help us develop relationships. First, they can help with the identification of prospects. So that means opening up their personal networks to the organization. What you can do as staff members then is review lists of prospects provided by your board members and correlate them to the donors in your database. Are these prospects already giving? If so, that's fantastic, because your board member can help build the relationship between those identified prospects and your club. And they're already a donor, so much the better. You might find a lot of these folks come to your special events and you just need to bring them a little bit more into the circle. So that handout that I mentioned, the board member personal development plan and circle of influence activity, is going to help you with identification of prospects and lead your board through how to do that. Next, your board members can help with cultivation. So cultivation involves building a relationship between the club and a donor with the intention of eventually asking for a gift. So in the world of dating, this means sort of going from the first date all the way up to going steady, maybe even getting married. This is all of the stuff that comes in between. So cultivation is really comfortable for board members because it doesn't involve asking for a gift. This is just trying to bring people into the fold, trying to get to know your donors, and trying to help the donors get to know your organization and what you do at the club. So here are a few examples of some cultivation activities that a board member could lead. First, they could host a cultivation event, like the Party with the Purpose. If you'd like to know more about the Party with the Purpose, you can go to fundraisingbank.org, or you can tune in for the webinar that covers Party with the Purpose. But very briefly, this is just a fundraising party. It's a cocktail party with a few friends where you spend a little bit of time talking about the Boys and Girls Club mission. They could fill a table at your special event with a group of potential donors. They could participate in discovery visits where you're just trying to get to know people over a cup of coffee or lunch. They could contact people from their networks and ask them to come in for a tour, come in and meet the CEO. Or they could invite their contacts to events at the club, like Day for Kids, talent shows, or Youth of the Year. Staff also have a part in cultivation, of course. So staff can plan cultivation events. They can gather all of this information and keep track of where that prospect is in the moves management process. When are they ready to be solicited? They can make sure that follow-up is conducted after the cultivation, and they can conduct debriefs to gather information and decide on next steps. So cultivation really are those activities after you've identified someone as a donor and before you plan to ask them for a gift. And those activities are a great time to involve your board. Next is solicitation. So this is the actual ask. Not every board member is going to be comfortable doing solicitation visits, and that's okay. Some will be comfortable if they go with another board member or with a staff member. And so then your board member can kind of tell the story, present the case, paint the picture, and then the staff member or the more experienced board member would do the ask. You're not going to be asking them to go out and do a solicitation until the prospect is well prepared. These are never going to come from out of left field. We ask for a visit, we go in and ask for money. And so once your board members start to see how the solicitation visits work, they may be a little bit more comfortable. Once they see that these are people who have a nice, strong relationship with the club, and we're asking them to give to a cause they feel passionately about. We're not begging them for money. Solicitation may be a little bit more comfortable. It's important to always remember to remind board members that prospects aren't giving to you. They're giving through you to a cause that is important to them. And if you've done a good job of educating the donor, by the time it comes time for the ask, they're going to be anxious to make that gift. One more way that board members can help with resource development is stewardship. Recognition, gratitude, and showing impact. This is a great area for folks who are a little bit hesitant about resource development, because while people may have some trepidation about solicitation, they may even be nervous about identifying people in their network. Nobody feels bad saying thank you. And this is a place where you can start to help your board members become more comfortable with resource development and build them up toward eventually plugging them in the other areas. So stewardship can take many forms. A lot of clubs have their board members handwrite thank you notes to folks who have made gifts. I've seen some people hand out thank you notes at the beginning of a board meeting and ask board members, would you please write a note while we're meeting today? Some clubs do thank you calls. And so the staff member will just send out a quick email to one of the board members and say, hey, so-and-so just made a gift. Can you call him real quick and tell him thank you? And all of the research about stewardship shows that that single act of a board member making a phone call significantly increases future gifts from that donor as well as retention of that donor. So that's a great way and an easy way to get a board member involved in stewardship. Your board members could also invite donors to upcoming events, send birthday cards out to folks, participate in a stewardship visit where someone from the club, probably the CEO, and the board member go out to a donor and say, thank you so much for your gift last year. Here's the impact. Here's what we were able to accomplish because of you. Thanks to your gift, we served 10,000 hot meals. Thanks to your gift, the kids raised their grades. And those are really comfortable visits for a board member. If you like the idea of getting your board members involved as stewards, which I hope that you do, there's a handout in the downloads called the 5x5 plan. And you could make this 5x5, you could make it 3x5, you could make it 10x5. But what it is each board member with this model would have 5 donors, and those are their 5 donors. And they're going to reach out to those donors 5 times during the year, doing stewardship kinds of calls, the kinds of activities I've just talked about. They would track those stewardship calls or activities on the 5x5 document, report those back to the club. So this would enable you to exponentially increase the amount of times that you're contacting donors, because each board member would then have 25 donor contacts. None of them asks. And so here cultivation and stewardship would sort of begin to blur a little bit. So even as I'm saying, here's an article about hunger in our community. Thank you for helping to alleviate hunger by supporting the club and our hot meals program. Even as I'm doing that, I'm cultivating the donor for the next gift. So the 5x5 plan just asks each board member to have 5 folks they contact 5 times during the year. What works great about this is when it's then time to ask that person for a gift again the next year, your donor has a really good relationship, or your board member has a really good relationship with 5 donors and will probably be comfortable going out and asking them for a gift. So your board members have lots of ways that they can participate in resource development. I love this quote by Gail Perry. There is a way to engage board members' hearts, minds, and passion for fundraising. We can get our board members engaged if we are engaging their hearts, their minds, and their passion. Love it. Okay, so what should the CEO and or resource development staff be doing to support board members? Because this isn't all on the board, right? It needs to be on the staff as well. So focus your board, inspire your board, ready your board, and engage your board. We'll talk about each one of these. First, focus your board. When we talked about board members being an advocate or ambassador for the club, we talked about mission moments at staff meetings. Keeping the board focused on the mission will allow your board to do great things because they want to make a difference. And if they really understand your mission and your work, the whole thing becomes so much easier. We want to tell that story because we're so proud of what we do and we believe so strongly in our ability to change lives. Focus on outcomes and results, real outcomes and real results, so that your board member can go in and say, let me tell you about Jasmine. When Jasmine joined the club, she was failing in her classes because she wasn't able to read. She was a participant in our literacy program, and I'm happy to tell you that within 1 year, she's now getting B's and C's. If your board member knows those kinds of stories, knows those kinds of outcomes and results, they'll be much more effective advocate. So be sure that your board members get to learn different programs at your board meetings. They know how many youth attend. They know the outcomes at your club, so they can go out and talk about them. Next, inspire your board. Make resource development fun. Please, please. Make being on the board fun. One club that I went and visited did the coolest thing. So they had a board meeting and they were taking board members out to a club they hadn't been to before. And it was about a 30-minute drive from the main branch. So they rented kind of a fun bus and they had cocktails on the way to this board meeting. And so everyone got to network and have a good time on the way to the board meeting. And by the time they got there, they were all relaxed and ready to talk. Now, I'm not saying that you have to provide alcohol to make resource development fun. But I am saying, thinking of something a little bit unusual, giving your board members the opportunity to get to know each other and to socialize, and remembering to keep the emphasis on this being enjoyable can help your board members to enjoy their service and to make you the #1 priority in their nonprofit lives. Take your board and RD to the next level. Have high expectations for what should be accomplished and follow through on getting those expectations met. Lastly, have a plan. Have a resource development plan that clearly articulates the role of your board members. Be sure that your board has signed off on your plan. Or better yet, that your resource development committee helped you to develop that plan. This will get the board more engaged. Nobody likes for somebody to come in and say, okay, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. But if we have a plan and say, can we look at these things? How do you see resource development operating? Let's collaborate and build that plan. That's going to result in more buy-in for your board. Ready your board. This means get your board prepared. Have the proper tools and training, some of those that we've talked about. Spend some time preparing them for different scenarios, a cultivation visit, a stewardship visit. This would not only be a good learning experience, but help your board members to network, form trust, and get to know each other. Helping your donors to understand the donor cycle will help them to get a better perspective on how little time we spend on asking and how much time we spend on the rest of the cycle. Once board members start to build those relationships, then they'll start to get a better comprehension of how the donor sees the organization and why they want to be part of it. So you'll get some of those tools and training here at the end of the webinar today. One tool that I'm going to mention on the last slide is bgcaboards.org. This is a fantastic resource that's been provided for clubs by our board transformation services folks, and it is really outstanding with all kinds of resources and articles. You can go there, your board can go there. This can be a great way to help those board members to really start participating. Finally, engage your board. Find the appropriate role for each of your board members. This should be a huge priority. So this doesn't mean one size fits all. Every board member isn't going to want to do the same thing. You may find that some folks love to host people at their house and would be great for having cultivation events. You may find that you have a few people who can open any door in town. You may find that you have others who are great at doing research or reporting impact, but they're not so comfortable going out and visiting with donors. There's a role for all of those people. Create a support structure to make sure that each board member has the training and the tools to work with donors. That will help to ignite their passion for the club and make them feel more comfortable. Mission accomplished. Your board now understands their role. They are engaged in resource development. They know how to support the board in their role. Taking time to educate your board on their roles and giving the opportunity to make a commitment is one of many steps in engaging your board in fundraising and resource development. Finding their passion and strengths within the donor cycle will help you leverage them within the community and build the necessary relationships to continue to serve and impact more youth more often. Your board can be the greatest partners to you in this process. We have some great research and tools that you can download or consult. Over in the handouts box, you'll see that there are 5 handouts today. There's first the PDF of today's slides. There's an article called 10 Fundraising Responsibilities for Board Members, and you'll see that they're not all asking. This could be really useful to open a dialogue with your board members. Which ones are you comfortable doing? Which of these have you never thought of before? There are 2 activities that you could do at board meetings. The powerful elevator speech for your board exercise, and the board member individual development plan and circle of influence exercise. There's the 5x5 plan tool that we talked about, and then here's the address, bgcaboards.org. These are all fantastic ways to get that board engaged. I would also encourage you, if you are not receiving our RD Pro newsletter, type your email address in the chat box there, and I'll make sure that you get put on the list. If you're not receiving our Insider newsletter, go to fundraisingbank.org and click on Insider Newsletter in the box in the top right-hand corner. Those are 2 more great tools that will help you across the spectrum of resource development. You can also suggest that your board members subscribe to either of those newsletters, and if you have any board members who are interested in subscribing to RD Pro, you can just ask them to send me an email, and I would be happy to have them added. At this point, I would love to answer any questions that anyone has. Please feel free to type questions in the questions box. If there's something you're wondering, I bet everybody else is too. No questions. Well, that's fantastic. If you have questions and you just aren't comfortable raising them in a group, please feel free to contact me at the email address on your screen. If you have questions about anything we talked about today, If you'd like a board member to get subscribed to either of our newsletters, just send me an email. I would be happy to help. That concludes our webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I wish you the very, very best of luck in engaging your board in resource development. Again, thank you all so much for being here. Have an awesome afternoon.